Hi, Dave.
Lisa, how are you? Good to
Good.
see
How
you
are
again.
you? Good to
I'm doing
see
just fine.
you. Lovely. Lovely to have you here. It's been such a great conversation. I loved, following, everybody's thoughts and very different perspectives since the last couple of hours. But I would love for you to share with us a little bit about your background, about your passion, about your work. You're in the As Tom, you're in the mecca of innovation, of entrepreneurship. You studied in Berkeley, you teach in Stanford, you've been an executive at IDEO, one of the most innovative companies. I'm a big fan. So I would love to listen to you, to your what you've done and what you see as some future goals that we have to address in the coming years.
Sure. So again, thanks, Louisa. Very nicely done for your interview, and now you get to be the questioner. So I guess this is a fun exchange of roles for you. So again, I'm Dave Blakely, and I'm joining you from Mountain View, California, which is as locked down or more locked down than as anywhere else. It's a whole new experience. I'm actually my academic background is actually in engineering and physics. I always I always am suspicious when people talk about sort of a narrative of their past as if everything was carefully reasoned, as if they controlled everything from one step to another. Because really, as with so many things in life, and certainly with my life, you just take advantage of a series of events that come up. I spent a couple of years after university working in Japan and traveling through Asia on this sort of obligatory Northern California thing to find myself. And after spending about 4 years working as a heads down engineer at Hewlett Packard, my mom actually mailed me an article from Newsweek magazine called The New Wizards of Silicon Valley. And that's what led to nearly 3 decades at IDEO, the design and innovation firm. And I think more than anything at IDEO, everybody gives lip service to this, but I think the two lessons I really learned there, aside from all the specifics around, the minutia of medical instruments and devices and the complexities of consumer products and so on, all that design work, I think two things I learned. One is a certain lesson in humility. We really don't know anything until we honestly and appreciatively and humbly conduct open-ended dialogue and conversation with all of the stakeholders in whatever initiative we're trying to chase after. And the other thing I learned is the true value of interdisciplinary research. I hadn't realized it, but when most people talk interdisciplinary, they're talking about one lead discipline, a policymaker, an engineer, something like that, with everyone else sort of chiming in. And in fact, real magic happens, in my experience, when you've got many dissimilar points of view, but they're all persuaded and facilitated to unify around a single direction. And then about 5 years ago, I spent some time with a startup, and what I'm now doing, we had an exit, and what I'm now doing is I'm running an incubator in Silicon Valley, which helps huge organizations to create and build and launch new ventures from within. So, bit of a long intro, apologies, back to you.
No, fantastic. So recently then you're helping large organizations, as you mentioned, launch new ventures, reinvent themselves. So in this moment that we're facing, how do you see individuals reinventing themselves, or cities reinventing themselves? Is there a framework that you apply with the companies that maybe we can follow? What are the underlying things that we can think of doing?
There is a framework, and it is the reason that I continue to be very excited about Utopia, and that I've always enjoyed my collaboration with Jonathan. I think that, and I'll explain these terms, I think that an inductive approach is terribly important coupled with a deductive approach. And let me tell you what that means. Design thinking is And design thinking has been very good to me, right? I'm a product of IDEO. I'm a product of user interviews and observations, design synthesis, iterative prototyping, and so on. But bottoms up thinking and the notion of creating a series of small experiments in small labs and letting them flourish. I mean, that certainly didn't start with IDEA. The philosophical underpinnings are something that people have been arguing about now for 200 years. And I think in terms of dueling frameworks, whether we're talking about large organizations or whether we're talking about cities or nation states, people's natural inclination is to be deductive. People's natural inclination is to assume a set of principles and then, following a rigid set of rules, say, these are principles for how to improve the conditions in a slum, or how to optimize, or improve the life of dwellers in a given city. Let's take these high-level principles that we accept as givens and let's push them down and let's customize them. And I'm not disputing that that is a valid way to go about changing things, but everything in my experience tells me that inductive thinking, which has almost sort of a ordinary, empirical, factual, common sense feel to it, where what we do is to make use of experiment and experience, the scientific method, if you will, having actual experiences and allowing those to bubble up to a set of hypotheses that you test in a fast and agile way. I feel that the permission and the enablement of teams to go through a fast series of experiments on everything from better ways to, better countermeasures to COVID, to improved ways to transact business in slums. I feel that sort of inductive and bottoms up thinking is a hugely overlooked approach in both the private and the public sectors. And I think we owe it to ourselves to quickly create and launch and watch and learn from a series of simple, fast, agile experiments all over the world.
Yeah. And I guess your mom helped to provoke that when early on she was, teaching you about empathy, maybe.
Thank God for moms.
It was the design thinking at her time. Design thinking early on. Very interesting. So you mentioned in a talk that you made that some tech moguls from the Valley, or that are being emerged and now are renowned for that, are coming from the academia without actually doing what you just mentioned, without experimenting and without having created something their own, maybe even if failed. And so you're betting now in entrepreneurs, the work that you're doing with the companies, probably in creating the space. Do you think now is a time that is best for entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs? Because a lot of people are going to lose their jobs in corporations. Is it time to start something by yourself, or is it time to strengthen the entrepreneurship in companies?
I mean, this is a cheating answer to your question, Louisa, but frankly, I think the answer is both. I think the natural inclination, as an individual, I'm often cautious, right? And I think the natural inclination of a big company is to conserve, pull back, wait it out in a time of, in a completely unprecedented business and social and economic and historical climate that we face right now, right? But, I think we can look to legendary investor Warren Buffett, who said, be bold where others are fearful. And we can ask large organizations, be they big companies or federal governments or city governments or state governments, okay, provinces, whatever. The winners in this space will be those that continue to innovate and that continue to push through and have the flexibility and the agility to adapt their methods to some of the fracture lines in our social and business history that are happening as a result of COVID. Fracture lines like increased working at home and unprecedented level of separation between individuals and so on. So I think it is a remarkable time for large organizations, public and private sector, to come out stronger on the other side of this. I'm not trying to minimize the terrible financial stress that many of them are up against, but we really must look at this as an opportunity as well as a threat. And on the flip side, look, I can tell you from Silicon Valley, for entrepreneurs, life is busy as well. Entrepreneurs, almost hormonally, almost by nature, break down barriers. Good entrepreneurs, they just break down doors and bust through walls to get where they want to be. And so the entrepreneurs I come into contact with are in no way allowing the current pandemic to slow them down. And indeed, venture capital money is still flowing and new businesses are still being created in the Valley.
Great to hear about that. Hopefully some will be also detoured to other places, including Latin America too. But just going back to your work with large organizations, with individuals, do you see, well, even before this pandemic, do you see a tendency, a trend to become more sustainable, aware, or to give power to sustainability? Do you see the individuals that are behind these large corporations? Is this something that is a long-term trend?
It is a long-term trend. And what I am most encouraged by, Luisa, is just straight up demographics. The future frontline workers and the future, ultimately the future executives of large organizations, particularly Global 1000 companies, are today's Gen X and millennials, okay? And that generation just statistically has something I love about that generation is all of you have a much increased consciousness and commitment and awareness to sustainability on all levels, and in particularly an awareness of the existential threat that climate change poses to us. I can tell you in my lifetime, there has never been a bigger or more profound threat than climate change. And I lived through, daily threat of, the Cold War and things like that. So look, the good news is organizations are changing. Shell is working with the incubator I belong to, Mach 49, right now on a serious move into renewables. I'm on an advisory board for Phillips 66, a refiner of oil and gas products, and they are looking very, very seriously at a future beyond peak oil, beyond hydrocarbons. Okay, Standard Bank, which is the largest lender by assets in sub-Saharan Africa, is putting not lip service, but millions and millions of dollars into social impact programs. So I've become skeptical, not cynical, but skeptical of large organizations when I hear about sustainability goals, because so often what you're looking at is poorly funded CSR, corporate social responsibility initiatives, that are just pure public relations that have no real teeth, and that when you dig a little deeper have no real staffing. On the flip side, I can tell you that there are very, very encouraging signs of corporations, either individually or banded together, putting real muscle and real energy into sustainability initiatives. An example I would give, Ernst & Young, you think of them as kind of a stodgy financial services firm. They are putting remarkable effort into a program called Ripples, which is a sustainability initiative intended to touch the lives of 1 billion underprivileged people around the world.
Amazing. And when did this subject become of such relevance for you in your lifetime? Was it a click of something, because now you're working with your organization with projects that have either social impact or they are sustainable in a way. But was there a moment in time in your personal life that it became more relevant, or was it always part of your life?
Mark Twain once said, travel is fatal to prejudice and narrow-mindedness. And for me, I'm older than almost everybody on the call, I imagine. For me, traveling through emerging economies in the early 80s with a backpack on, okay, traveling through Bangladesh, traveling through India. I spent 3 months taking, buses and trains through India. That experience of travel, people experience these things all differently. Some people experienced India, for example, as a marvelous and spiritual land. I saw those sides of it, but all I could see all around me was grinding poverty, born of incredibly inequitable channels of distribution and an incredibly unfair polarization of the economy. And it's a strange thing. You're traveling through these countries, I'm 23 years old, I'm learning all these things. And at the same time, I feel almost resentful because I say to myself, and this is true, 40 years later, I say to myself, look, I'm never really going to be able to rest easy again in my life, having seen the sort of grotesque poverty and inequality that I have seen traveling through these developing countries. And since then, obviously, I've taken my children to see emerging economies. But that sort of conviction that comes from travel and from personal experience has never left me. And in fact, the experience is as fresh today as it was decades ago.
I completely agree. And I really think that we should, experience all sorts of realities to build something for our future, not for the small bubble or the small world that we're in, but actually seeing other realities that are different from us. I have a friend that she was building this popular computer to, for low-income population. And she just went and lived in a community for many, many months to actually, to relate to that reality. And I think that's empathy, and that's what design thinking brings, and all this approach of the user-centric, like to build something for someone else, you actually have to feel and to breathe and to think what your client wants, right? So it's important, and traveling, you get exposed to so many different realities and cultures and opinions that it helps you, broaden your horizon and actually, build something for the world instead of for, your tiny, the tiny bubble that you live in. Well, I think the time has finished for me, which is a pity. It was such a lovely conversation, but you continue now, I think, with Araceli. So yeah, so thank you for the opportunity, and hope to continue this chat with you and with others soon. I will stop my video now.